Hi guys, welcome back to Rad's Retreat. Rad speaking, Rad's in the house, or should actually say Rad's in the shed, more would be a better saying. Today I thought we'd take a look at some parting tools. Well, on this video we're going to take a look at some parting tools. Parting tools, they're a turning tool that isn't given a great deal of attention. Most people seem to give, when they're reviewing turning tools, it's either ball gougers or spindle gougers. The humble parting tool seems to get very, very little said about it. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about them today. The first one I'm going to start with is probably my most used parting tool. It's made by Hamlet Craft Tools of Sheffield, which is basically another name for Henry Taylor. If you can't afford Henry Taylor tools, buy Hamlet. They're cheaper, but they're made in the same factory by the same people. This is a 1/8 parting tool, or 3mm for us who live in Europe in the metric system. 3mm, or for you in the US, 1/8. It's my most used parting tool. It's just a nice size, is 1/8. There's nothing special about it. It's just a straight parting tool. It's not diamond shape or whatever. It's just a straight parting tool, but it's just a fantastic size. It's got a good length to it, so you can get in deep there. But of course, with it being straight sided, if you do go too deep, you're going to risk binding up. There's friction involved, and you're going to heat that wood up. The metal's going to heat up, and you're going to get binding. So just be careful of that. Don't go too deep with them. But yeah, every wood turning shop really should have a 1/8 parting tool in. Very handy tool indeed. Right, we'll move on to what is probably my second most used parting tool. This, which is quite a thick parting tool, it is, what is it, 10mm or 3/8 for you guys in the US. It didn't actually start off as a parting tool per se. It actually started off as a badan, but I couldn't get it to work. I just could not get on with it as a badan. So basically I just added another another facet. A badan is basically a tool that's shaped like that. This edge is straight, and then you have one one sharpening surface coming up to it like that. But obviously what I did with this was add another surface to it here, and basically turned it into a beading / parting tool. It'll turn beads very, very well, and it also works as a large parting tool. But you do have to be a little bit careful with it being a thick parting tool. Excuse me, it can be a little bit grabby. You do have to be a little bit careful with it. There's a lot of area there. There's a lot of steel coming in contact with the wood, so they can be a little bit grabby at times. You do have to be a bit careful, but it's very good for turning beads. It's a very strong tool as well, with it being so thick. Nice strong tool. I don't use it a great deal as a parting tool. I use it more for flicking beads, and also for doing tenons as well. With it being a nice thick tool, you can make those tenons nice and parallel. Right, we'll move on. This next tool is a tool I bought. It's by Crown Tools of Sheffield, which I'm not a big fan of. This is part of their cryogenic range. It's treated in such a way that it should hold an edge for longer. It cost more for a start off than a standard parting tool, a diamond parting tool, because of the cryogenic supposed treatment. But to be honest, I found it holds its edge no better than a standard parting tool, than a standard, M2 high-speed steel parting tool. I do know the philosophy regarding cryogenic tools, the martensitic. They do change the steel structure to a martensitic structure, which is the idea, but either Crown's cryogenic process is not very good, or they're using inferior high-speed steel, one or the other, because it simply doesn't hold an edge any longer. And it was, again, substantially more expensive, so I'm not a big fan of Crown. I do use the tools because they do make a lot of tools which nobody else makes, so I do use them tools, but in general I do try and stay away from Crown now. They are cheaper than the other tools, but in my eyes they're cheaper for a reason, and that's because they don't the steel's not quite as good in my eyes. Sorry to say, I do realise there's probably people that's shouting at the screen now saying there's nothing wrong with Crown tools. There isn't anything wrong with Crown tools until you try an Henry Taylor or you try a Robert Sorby. Then you'll find that there's something a little bit lacking in them. You'll realise that Crown are just not in the same league. Right, this is a diamond section. I don't know if you can see it there. It's basically the diamond section parting tools. The idea is, with it being a diamond section, it's at its widest right in the middle there, so you've got a lot less friction building up. There's a lot less metal coming into contact with the wood on the sides, so therefore you should be able to go deeper. In reality, I don't reckon it makes much of a difference, to be honest. I tend to relieve my cuts anyway. I'll push in maybe a couple of inch, and then I'll relieve it slightly and then push in again. I don't tend to push in too deep with parting tools. There's a lot of friction involved and a lot of heat involved, which can be not good for the wood, especially if you're turning woods like yew wood doesn't like heat at all. It checks very easily, so I don't tend to push in very deep with parting tools. I tend to relieve and then start another push. Right, we'll move on. But I'm not impressed with this tool at all. I'm not impressed with Crown's cryogenic tools, and I'm not impressed with their Pro PM tools, the powdered metal tools, either. In fact, I'm not impressed with any of the tools, to be quite honest. They're cheap, but they're cheaper for a reason. Right, moving on. Here we've got a Robert Sorby in section. You can see it's very deep. It's a fluted parting tool. This one is 1/16 of an inch or 2mm. I do believe it's just slightly under 2mm actually. It's about 1.6 or 1.8mm, but roughly 2mm or 1/16 of an inch. Very, very thin. If you can see the cross section on that, it's very, very thin. With it being fluted, you'll probably not be able to see the prongs, but right on the cutting edge there, with it being fluted, it creates two little horns, razor sharp horns, and rather than just pushing into the wood, the horns actually sever the fibres. You know, like a normal parting tool, it just kind of moves the fibres out of the way. Well, this one severs them and then cuts them, if you know what I mean. That's kind of hard to explain, but the horns actually sever the wood fibres first, so you do get a nice clean cut. On when you cut with a normal parting tool, sometimes you can get the frayed edges where the fibres have been cut. Well, with this you get a very, very clean cut, very little fraying, and that's because of the horns, very, very sharp. We'll move on. This is probably one of my most used parting tools as well. This is another Robert Sorby. Very deep in section, so although it's very thin, again it's 1/16 of an inch, it is very strong because it's so deep. But again, the problem is if you're pushing too deep, that's a lot of area there. You're going to get a lot of friction involved because it's such a large area of metal pushing up against wood. You're going to generate a lot of heat, so you can't push in too deep with these, but they're very good. I like them. I use these a lot. The first one I bought was by Crown when I was first starting, and it was actually a completely different profile to what this one is now, and I wasn't too impressed with it and didn't use it. But when I bought the Sorby one, I liked it, so I went to the grinder and I ground a very similar profile to it, if you can see that, and now I use it quite frequently. It doesn't hold its edge as well as what the Sorby one does, but you know, if the Sorby one goes dull halfway through a cut, I can just reach for the crown, and that's generally how I use it. You know, if the Sorby goes dull, rather than have to get the grinder out and sharpen it up or whatever, or use a slipstone, I'll just grab the crown one and finish the cut with the crown. Right guys, that's about it with the parting tools that I generally use. As I said, they're not mentioned much, but they are a much needed tool in wood turning. They're a tool we all use, so really they do demand a little bit more airspace, as there's so many different types as well. But anyway, those are the main ones that I use in my shop. But these little ones, these are very, very handy and useful. I really do recommend these things. Very, very handy. Right guys, I'll leave it there. I've waffled on a bit again. No doubt we'll be close to that 15 minutes again. So I'll end it there, and when we come back I'll have a look at some scrapers, I think, if that's okay with you. So if you want to come back on for the next video, I'll appreciate that. Right guys, I'll catch you later. Take care in your workshops. Catch you later guys, bye bye.